Hey Kristen, it's Katelyn, and I have to say I was really excited. Not that I don't love your kids, because you know I do, but I was really excited to see some new work from you, just because family portraits aren't necessarily the most professional portraits because you're not working for a client, and so I'm really excited you sent these, and they are beautiful. This one is especially stunning. It is a beautiful product. She should be so happy with this. If I had this, I'd be happy. So, a few things that are really great that I noticed is your light is very even, and that's hard to accomplish. So right here isn't blown out because it's closer to the light source, and that's great. Her face is really exposed nicely, and you did a great job hiding the yellow tint that you originally had. In the straight out of camera image. So, I know it's hard to shoot with two different light sources, especially when you can't turn, this light off that was over here. But I think you did a great job. And if you ever run into that again and this side of her looks orange because it's not natural light, I would just really lightly desaturate a brush in Lightroom and just go over it a little bit, and that should help. But this is absolutely stunning, and I mean, it's hard to critique because I don't see anything wrong with it. I think for her, I think you did a great job pulling the veil over her shoulder because for brides that aren't, the smallest, with not the smallest figures, like to have their arms covered normally, and so that's a really good technique to pull the veil over the crease of their arm and their chest right there. So that's awesome. Something else that I would think about would be gosh, I mean, I don't know. It's so good. Let me come back to this one. I really love it. So I don't have much to say about it. This is beautiful. This really is. And I love your editing. I think it's very crisp and classic. If you wanted it to be a little bit softer, it doesn't need to be, but if you wanted it to be, you could shoot this at 2.0 and have a little bit more of a glow. But I think it's fine at 2.5, and her flowers and right here are still in focus there. So I just want to talk a little bit about posing here, just because if you had brought her head up just a little bit, or chin up, really, you would get rid of the white underneath her pupil. Whenever you see white underneath the colored part of the eye, the pupil and the iris of the eye, sometimes people can start to look creepy. Now, she doesn't look creepy here. She doesn't. She looks great, and this looks natural. But if she had her chin down any further and her eyes were looking up at you any further, she wouldn't look natural. And so we're like borderline here. So I think in the future, if you ever are shooting up above someone, you're like, oh, why does this not look good? Ask them to bring their chin up, and it's not going to feel natural to them because they're looking up really high and they're going to think, oh my gosh, that looks strange, but they really don't. They just have to trust you, because the more they bring the chin up, the less white you'll see underneath the iris, and that makes it look more natural. So that's just something to think about. I'm sure she doesn't even think about that when she looks at that picture. I just noticed it because I'm very conscious of that. So I think the composition's awesome. You left some space here, which is great. And unless it was unflattering, I may ask to take her bouquet and put it right about here, just because a lot of brides naturally keep their bouquets really high and they cover up the pretty neckline of their dress and their jewelry. So that's just something to think about. Maybe bringing the flowers down so they're right about here. And that also lengthens out the arm and makes the arm look a little bit skinnier. So that's just something to think about. And another option would be having this elbow lean on the corner of the chair towards the light, and then you shoot a little farther over, and that will make her torso look a lot smaller as well. So there's some little tidbits. Now for this one, I'm glad you showed this to me, because I can totally tell it was shot right before the dark came in, but that's okay. And I think what you did in that situation is all you can do. And I teach people in workshops all the time that we're responsible for every part of the session. We're responsible for how the client feels emotionally, how they feel socially, and how they feel physically. So if they feel rushed, even if they're late, you have to calm them down once they're there and reassure them that it's going to be fine, even if they are the ones that put themselves in that situation. if they don't feel confident and emotionally, they don't feel good about themselves, that's somewhat our fault. We should make them feel comfortable in front of the camera. And so I think you did a great job handling the location situation, and I'm sure it's not ideal, but I think you did a great job. So for this image, whenever things are pretty dark outside, of course, if you're shooting raw, you can always warm them up a little bit, but sometimes just the temperature slider is not enough. So I would just adjust the tones a little bit. So I'm just taking the saturation of the highlights to 5 right here, and then I'm changing the tone to make it a little bit warmer. I'm going to do the same thing to the shadows. Again, this is just taking the tones of the shadows and the highlights of an image and warming them up. And I'm also going to do a little bit of fill light, just a little bit, to add more color. So when you add more fill light, because you have trees behind you and there's no light coming through the trees, excuse me, they're really black. So if you want to just add a little bit of fill light back there, it'll add more green, and I'm going to up the vibrance just a tad, maybe the contrast. Okay, so, and I might even lighten the darks a little. So this is what I'm going to show you. Let's do a before and after. It's really crazy how much little adjustments. So that's, and maybe that looks a little too warm. I'm not sure. On my monitor it looks fine, but when you compare this to this looks very, very blue. And you might not notice that if you can't compare it to something else. But this may, I mean, you cannot tell that this was at the end of the day. I mean, it looks like it's, afternoon, evening on an overcast day. So that's something to think about, and I hope that was helpful. Another way that you can try to think about this is, look at the shadows of her dress. When you look at just this image by itself, it looks fine, but always give it a shot if you're ever shooting with weird coloring, like a weird white balance. Try changing the shadows and the highlights a little bit and see what that can do. So I hope that was helpful. And let's go back to this one. I really, really love it. I'm trying to think of what to tell you. One little thing I noticed about her torso is if you could have her arm either come forward, this bunch right here takes away the shape of her waist. So either pushing this part down or having her elbow cover up this fabric would make her torso look like it goes in right there, which is what every woman wants. So that's something to think about. But I think this is a beautiful, beautiful image. So you should be really proud of yourself, and I think you just have so much talent, and I'm really impressed. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a great Christmas with all your kiddos, and I will see you next week. Bye.